Okay, we'll call to order this meeting of the California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board. It is Wednesday, August 21st. We'll begin with the roll call of the board. The chair is present. Vice Chair Reeves.
Present.
Member Lightstone.
Present.
Member Eng.
Present.
Member Allen.
Here.
Please let the minutes show that all members are present. Now we'll move to approval of the minutes from our previous board meeting of July 17th, 2019. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Member Eng, seconded by Member Allen. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No? No no's. So we show it passing unanimously, the minutes of the July 17th board meeting. Now we move to board reports. First, the chair's report. Got a few brief items. Today we are live streaming for the first time. We've been on video several times now, and it's always been posted to our website after the conclusion of our meeting, but right now we are broadcasting live on I assume it's the CUIAB website. So anybody who might be watching, hope you enjoy this. For board members, you can go back and see a video on the website after the fact. It will still be posted to the website.
It'll be linked from there to YouTube.
Be linked. Great. We are in our meetings, normally meeting for somewhat less than an hour as a board. Important to know for those who are watching the live stream that we actually do most of our work as a board between meetings. In fact, in the last month, since our July meeting, board members have reviewed and resolved 973 appeals of unemployment cases. Cases, of course, very important because folks who are on unemployment are waiting for the results of their cases, and really these unemployment checks that they receive are a lifeline to get them from the job they left to hopefully their next job. And for those small businesses that are feeling they're unfairly having to pay unemployment, they appeal to us as well, and we make a decision that sometimes can keep a family business afloat where the margin might be very small. So that's the work we do between meetings. During meetings, we have reports mainly from our staff, and we can, of course, ask questions as board members. Today's report from the chair, in addition to what I've already said, a couple of things. I want to congratulate Michael Allen. He was confirmed since our last meeting by the California State Senate. He and I were both confirmed by a very comfortable margin. And so Michael will be with us till 2020, your term is up?
Yes.
And hopefully we'll be reappointed then too.
We can hope, yes.
Yes. So congratulations, Michael. A couple other brief reports. Just so board members are aware, we are engaged in bargaining right now, or CalHR on our behalf is engaged in bargaining with our ALJs. Our staff is very involved, and we will get reports as that bargaining progresses once there's information that can go to us, and you'll hear more about that. Lastly, I want to thank EDD, Patrick Henning at EDD, and the staff. They provided us with an excellent tour today, and I guess a couple of you went yesterday as well, to see really the genesis of the claims that eventually come to us. How do they get filed? How do they get input? How are the initial determinations and redeterminations made? So speaking on behalf of myself, I think my colleagues on the board and some staff who attended, a very educational hour spent today, or a couple hours spent this morning. And that concludes my report. We move on now to Vice Chair Reeves' report.
I don't have one this morning.
Thank you, Dan. Moving on to Member A.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And again, I want to thank you for helping to ensure that we had a productive tour of the EDD. I learned so much, and also Elena and everyone that was responsible for organizing. Please make sure that they receive our thank you. To see the dedicated, hardworking employees in the divisions, to see the machinery and the technology, to also see the patients of which and care that particularly that we saw in the second session of how the staff interacted with the claimants and the employers, really fulfilling the mission of the agency to give respect to the employer-employee relationship. That was really touching to me, and also to see the volume and to know that we have hardworking personnel that are achieving metrics and making it possible for us to get the work product that has gone through many, many different layers and opened envelopes. So thank you again, Mr. Chair. It was quite an experience, and I hope to maybe follow up again at a later point in time and follow up on some of the things that we're not able to see today.
Well, thank you for suggesting it, Mike, and special thanks to Lori Kurosaka for setting everything
And
up.
Laurie, yes, thank you, Laurie.
Anything else, Mike?
No,
Okay, other member reports, moving to member Lightstone.
No report today.
Member Ellen.
Yeah, first off, I would like to return the favor and congratulate Chair Block. In my estimation, he carried the weight of the load for the hearing, but it didn't go unnoticed that many of the staff here came and supported us at the confirmation hearing, and that was very much appreciated. And I received a lot of emails from folks throughout the agency, and that was appreciated as well. The other thing I wanted to mention is that having now served for a few months as the newest and oldest member of the board, that I'm so pleased with my new colleagues. I feel like they are so serious in their work and so I feel like they're going the extra mile to make sure that they're getting the cases right. And I know that's been with the past boards as well, but I feel this particular board is just really doing a very good job of being dedicated to their work, and I just wanted to compliment them. The second thing I just wanted to bring up is that the fabled newsletter is almost ready. It's being reviewed and looked at for final edits. And we're always open to, throughout the agency, for people who want to contribute to the newsletter, because I think it's a great way to be able to have folks know what's going on throughout the agency. One thing I found very interesting is when I did go through the confirmation interviews, it came up very often in the discussion, the newsletter, which kind of surprised me. And almost without exception, the folks who were interviewing me felt this was something very positive, and so I think that we need to pay attention to it and continue doing it. My plan was for a summer edition. We're approaching Labor Day. I consider the fall equinox as the deadline for this, but we're almost there, and I think it's going to be a very good and complete newsletter with a lot of good information. And then, as always, the last thing I want to do is, because we work here in Sacramento, and it's not like the board members are out frequently in the field for all our field offices, but I just want to convey for myself, and I know the other board members feel the same, we appreciate how hard the work is. We appreciate our judges. We appreciate the support staff, our managers and supervisors. And I don't think that I try to ever let a meeting pass without conveying that, because I think nothing should be taken for granted. And our chair, I'm very impressed with the attitude he took when he first came here of always trying to continuously improve this organization. Given from where we were after coming out of the Great Recession, when I first arrived here almost 6.5 years ago, I've seen great progress with the agency. Are we perfect? No, but I think that we do an excellent job, and I very much want to see us continue along the path of providing the resources that everyone needs in terms of training, tools, technology, so that we can continue progressing as an organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. A couple other items before we move to board reports. From board reports. One related to the newsletter. Perhaps, if with your approval, Janet or Laurie, people are putting it together, we should have maybe a statement that talks about the fact that we are now live streaming, if it's not already in there, and tells people how to actually get to the live stream and what time and dates the meetings are. Again, I don't know how people take advantage of it, but it should be out there. Other thing, our next meeting is scheduled for September 18th. I'm sorry, it's scheduled for September 11th, which is not our normal sequencing. Executive Director Gonzalez and I talked about this yesterday. Normally it would be the third Tuesday or Wednesday of the month, which is the 18th. Instead, for whatever reason, we have it on the 11th. I just don't know what the reason is. So I'm just informing board members. I'm going to be asking, unless there's some objection, I'm going to be asking Mary Luz to call around and see if it's okay to move it to the 18th, which is our normal meeting date. One reason it's better for me, and that's what's important, is that the agency meeting is always on that third Wednesday, so I try to do it one day so I can do both meetings in one trip. If we can't, that's fine. We'll do it on the 11th. But does anybody know they have a conflict with the 18th that they want to tell me about now?
I might have a conflict,
Okay.
but I can talk to you about that.
Well, if you do have a conflict, that's fine. Maybe that may be, if you had talked to Kathy, maybe that's why we moved it to the 11th, because we really couldn't figure out why it was moved to the 11th. But if there is a trip or something, don't worry about it. We can do it on the 11th then. So Mary Louise will talk to you directly, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other issues in board reports? If not, we'll move to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the board? Any members of the public who wish to come forward and address the board? Seeing none, we'll move to report by our Executive Director and Chief ALJ, Elena Gonzalez.
Good afternoon, Chair Block, Vice Chair Allen, and board members. I too want to congratulate Chair Block and Member Allen for their confirmation. We've enjoyed working with you. All of the staff has commented on how we move forward, and we've been a cohesive organization with your leadership. And we have worked with Member Allen for quite some time, and we appreciate the continuity with the work we do. And although sometimes that newsletter does get in our way, we have worked towards getting your newsletter at the appropriate time. And I know that it is expanding to the point where the people will enjoy reading it rather than getting some growing pains to making it a little too dry or not dry enough or whatever the concept is. But anyway, a lot of people worked on it. I think the articles look good. I think we need to go forward. But congratulations, we're happy to work with you again. Moving on to what is going on for management, there is a leadership in government program at Sacramento State, which a number of our presiding judges have attended thus far. And what we're attempting to do is have all the managers over the course of 2 years take this management program. It's usually spread out over 3 or 4 months, a day or two in the program with other state leaders. This class will be Rob. So Rob is shaking his head a little bit. Rob Silva was accepted into the program along with Jody Remke and presiding Judge John Martin of the Los Angeles Office of Appeals. And they'll begin, is it September? Okay, so they'll be attending the program. So when they're done, they learn new skills and hopefully can become better leaders. So we're happy to have sent a number of people. I think we've sent 6 presiding judges, and hopefully we'll get everybody into the program. The next thing is the live streaming. I know this was an effort by many, many people. When Chair Block first got here, he said, "What, you don't live stream?" And we said, "Okay, we'll get that for you." And I think, it's 3 years later, or but we took some time because we had some technological issues, and under the leadership of Jeff Willoughby in IT and Laura Kurosaka and Jan Glente, it has been a team effort to make it work, and I think it's a credit to everybody working on it through some issues. And it made, I think, other people come together to realize every part of the organization has to work on something that may appear initially a simple process. And coming as it does at the time we're trying to modernize our appeals system, and so on, it's all working together. The appeals modernization project, Jeff will talk to you a little more about that, but it has been moving forward very quickly, and we have meetings set up with subject matter experts, which include presiding judges, legal support supervisors, other staff members who will assist, so we see what the detailed requirements of the system are. So when we get to that point, everyone would have contributed to making it work from their perspective. So that's been some doing as well, and I'm happy that that's moving forward. There were no security issues this month, so nothing to report there. And as for the numbers for, if you look at the top of the field operations numbers, the Department of Labor standards are 60% or more of the cases should be closed within 30 days, and the field closed 58.2%. So for the month, it was under the standard. However, it is evaluated on a yearly basis, and the yearly date to date is 71.2. Traditionally, in July, August, December, we do. Those are some of our lowest months of production because of vacations, but we always make it up in the other months. Same thing with the percentage of cases closed within 45 days is we made that standard for this month. And the average case age, which has to be under 30, is 26.4 in the field. So overall, we're still progressing well towards meeting all the federal timeliness standards. That's the end of my report. Any questions?
Questions or comments for Lena? Member Allen?
Just usually in your report, you give a report on security for the organization.
There were no security issues. The good news was there was no security issues this month, so there was something to
That is good news. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Executive Director Gonzalez? Seeing none, we move on to our presiding administrative law judge, Jody Remke.
Good afternoon. Congratulations, Chair Block and Member Allen as well on your confirmation. I'm going to be reporting on the July 2019 performance indicators and looking at the appellate operations on the right side of the sheet. We start with those cases closed in 45 days or less. As you know, the Department of Labor guideline is 50% or more. We are at 95.1%, so obviously meeting that. As well as those cases closed in 75 days or less, the standard again 80% or more, and we're at 99%. That is in part a result, as you can see, if you look at our overall workload, the balance of open cases is down, and not significantly from last month, but slightly down. But if you look at the FO, you can see that their caseload is increasing, so you would think it's going to trickle up. So it's just a matter of time, I would assume. As for the case aging, you can see there the pending cases, case aging. The standard is 40 days or less, and ours for the month was 16.4. And again, that's in large part due to the smaller caseload.
Great, thank you, Jody. Really good results. Any questions or comments for presiding Judge Remke?
Just thank you. It's great.
And I want to credit too the other board members. You guys are doing a great job of processing your cases, getting them out quickly, but also fairly and giving each case the serious consideration it deserves. Moving on now to our CIO, Jeff Willoughby.
Thank you, Chair Block. I would also like to congratulate you and Alan, members of the board. I'm pleased and very cautiously optimistic that we are going to get better and better at live video streaming our board meetings. There have been a couple of ground ones that we've been trying to chase down, but I think that we will solve for those, and we'll see the production value increase over time as we get more comfortable with both the situational approach to the board meetings and the hardware that we're dealing with. So that is very good news. We did receive from the Department of Technology our draft audit report last week. Staff are now summarizing the findings and preparing our response, which is due by September 3rd. So we have an opportunity to reply to that audit, and we will do so. As Executive Director Gonzalez mentioned, on the appeals modernization front, we've released a request for information. This takes our highest level requirements and sends them out to the vendor community. We're looking for a response from the vendor community to help us do market research and know which vendors we will be able to have come in and interview so we can make a decision on which one to go forward with. Next, we're beginning the initial phases of working on introducing a new trouble ticketing solution. So this is for internal use, but it has a lot to do with IT service management, self-service for users, and things as simple as password resets may be able to be done online instead of picking up the phone. So we're looking forward to putting some structure around that. And last, I'd like to take a quick moment to recognize a recent graduate of the state's Digital Services Innovation Academy. Will Lee is a recent graduate, and if, with your permission, I'd like to ask him to come up and give just his thoughts on what the Academy was about and what his experience was like.
Great, thank you, Mr. Lee.
Good afternoon. As you may know, the Department of Technology handpicks students, 14 students in this year's class, to learn about IT and project management. It was a great experience in the sense that not only did I learn a lot for IT, the latest technology, I did learn a lot of just understanding how to gather requirements and software development and everything that encompassed with it. The other thing I took out of this was all the contacts I made from Department of Technology to Secretary of State. Every IT professional that I worked with was fully engaged, and I learned so much and so grateful I got to work with these people. And with everything I learned, I do bring back to this agency, and so I do thank the organization for allowing me to attend this academy.
Great, well, thank you, Mr. Lee. And those kind of contacts can be very helpful down the road when there's need for interagency cooperation, or even just borrowing ideas. So.
Exactly, and I plan on keeping in contact with these resources as they provide solutions for me as I can provide for them.
Great, thank you. Jeff, anything further?
That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for CIOB?
Well,
Vice Chair.
Jeff, the audit report, you're going to respond to it. Will we be able to see that audit report soon and your responses?
Yes, I can provide summaries for you.
That'd be very helpful.
Thank you, Dan.
That was my question, so that's fine.
Okay. I just want to mention you attended along with me and Member Eng the presentation this morning at EDD. And probably the most significant thing, one of the most significant things besides learning more about process, was just seeing how much of their work is electronic, but then gets reduced to paper before it gets transferred to us, because our two systems don't talk to one another, and then we make it electronic again. So I appreciate your commitment of you and your staff to try to work with EDD to do something to make that system more smooth and efficient and effective. So, and not just for our staff, because for our workers it's extra work, but particularly for our the parties in our cases where their decisions could come out, and we do such a good job of getting decisions out quickly. But they could come even more quickly if we had a quick electronic transfer of information, and that is one of our goals, I think, as an office, to do more efficiently electronically. So thank you for that, and thank you also for setting up this live streaming. And I'm sure there'll be kinks, there always are, but we'll work them out, and this should be something that'll be very accessible for our employees around the state. When you're a statewide organization, it seems real important to me that everything not be held closely in an office building in Sacramento. So now we are distributing to all the state, however many people might want to access, at least they have it available to them, and in fact parties around the state as well. So thank you for that. With that, we move on to our Chief Administrative Services Officer, Rob Silva. Rob.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Block, Vice Chair Reeves, and board members. I'll start my report with the overtime report that's in your folder. This will be the fiscal year end report from 2018-2019. The only significant overtime used in the last quarter of that fiscal year was by the IT branch. They used 175 hours of overtime over that period, with 58 hours recorded in the month of June. 57% of IT's total fiscal year overtime expenditures happened during that last quarter of the fiscal year. So with field operations only using significant overtime in the beginning of last fiscal year, and IT only using significant overtime in the latter portion, we ended up underspending the fiscal allocation by almost $57,000. Our total overtime expenditures of $45,000 in 18-19 represents a 57% decrease from the previous fiscal year. And at the bottom of the form, under lump sum payouts, although we had less attrition in 18-19, we had 28 employees versus 32 employees leave in 2017-18. The $412,000 that we expended was actually a 17% increase from the previous fiscal year. This resulted in CUIAB overspending that allocation by, as you can see, almost $26,000. During last month's board meeting, I reported that we were in the process of updating our memorandum of understanding and service level agreements with the Employment Development Department. And at that time, we still had to resolve some issues surrounding asset management. We then met with EDD's Business Operations Division, and we have now identified and recorded the responsibilities of both of our departments in the transferring and surveying of capitalized equipment and sensitive assets. So that issue has been resolved. Subsequently, another issue arose, and it's a different arena altogether. CUIAB submits monthly UI workload reports to Department of Labor, and there are also other reports submitted less frequently in the areas of data validation and quality review. In order for us to submit those reports to Department of Labor, we have to access one of EDD's systems to submit the reports to DOL. And recently there's been difficulty in accessing that system. There's also been difficulty in getting timely support from EDD with this ongoing problem. So what we've now done is we've added additional language to the pending service level agreement. That our intended resolution is for EDD to simply provide the service for us. We will complete the reports, give them to EDD, and then they will directly perform the mechanics of uploading the documentation to Department of Labor. I have an update with our telephonic interpreter contract. We had a 3-year contract in place that we entered into the beginning of 2017. In recent months, the vendor wasn't really consistently giving us the customer service that we expected. There was an inordinate amount of dropped calls, and there were also issues with securing quality interpreters. There were actually instances in which the ALJ would begin the hearing, explain the procedures, and the interpreter would excuse themselves. In our communications with the vendor stated that some of their interpreters prefer to do work that was in a less complex environment, sometimes earning a higher rate than they were through our contract. This has been going on for about 4 or 5 months. The vendor was able to resolve the connectivity issues, and we had less dropped calls. But obviously, more important, there's the service that we need quality interpreters. The vendor's solution for us to be guaranteed high-quality interpreters was that we could pre-schedule with them at 3 times the cost. This solution, if you want to call it that, was clearly beyond the scope of the contract. So we exercised the termination clause with that vendor. And a new contract has been awarded to a company called Lion Bridge Global Solutions. An announcement was just sent to management last week, as well as user instructions, letting everyone know that on September 1st we'll begin using Lion Bridge for telephonic interpreters. And lastly, we now have our 2019-20 budget authority. This week and next we're going to be reviewing the branch staffing requests in conjunction with our Personal Services Authority so that we can present a budget to the board at the September 11th or September 18th board meeting. And that's my report.
Thank you, Rob. Questions or comments for
Robert, so can you walk me through the budgeting process a little bit? Because there are troubling signs that we are heading towards a recession. While our budget seems to be declining, our demand might ultimately increase over the next 12 months, not decrease. And I'm curious as to how nimble this department, because I wasn't here for the Great Recession and the scaling that had to happen during that time. I don't think anyone's talking about a recession on that scale or scope. But I'm just curious about the mechanics, the internal mechanics to pivot should demand for our services increase, and therefore our ability to respond quickly. How do you work with the budget and with the Department of Finance?
Yeah, well, we work, CUIAB works specifically with the Employment Development Department, who is the holder of the federal grant for the unemployment insurance program. And with the October and May revises each year, the Employment Development Department's program estimates group looks at obviously workload and what's happening nationwide, and provides unemployment insurance projections, and then our budget is adjusted at that time up or down based on those program estimates.
Is it once a year?
That's twice a year, October revise and May revise. In all honesty, the word pivot has been difficult in the past because, well, the Great Recession was kind of obviously it was called the Great Recession. It was a difficult time, but the ability to ramp up hiring is a little bit difficult in that we're typically awarded funding with about a 6-month or more delay with the way the projections work. So it's difficult to just turn on a dime. We do everything we can with regard to keeping retired annuitants on our payroll for if and when they're needed. But with regard to facilities, for instance, if we need to open facilities, that's always a 1.5 year long procedure. And so what we typically do instead of that is we'll rent out temporary space to do hearings. But again, every October, every May, our budget is adjusted, and it's been so long since it's been adjusted that direction. Like you alluded to, we've just been losing funding for almost a decade now. But in all honesty, it's difficult to pivot quickly, but we do everything we can.
And how sensitive to economic forces are those estimates? I mean, are they behind the curve, or are they usually pretty
They're usually pretty targeted on it. I mean, the EDD's group takes in a lot of factors, and they always factor in that as well, not just recent UI workload.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dan. Important questions. Lena, do you want to add anything to our preparations for recession in terms of testing for prospective judges?
So I wrote down the word nimble because we are the way the federal government funding works, we are the exact opposite of nimble. Because of the 6-month delay, the work will build up, and they won't approve the funding until it can be longer than that. So we need people, we need to hire, we need to do what we have no money to do until further down the road. So in terms of when we were at the CUIAB program preparing for the recession, a lot of the comments were simply having lists available of people that we could hire, having a training program in place so that when we do hire ALJs, is a lot of that, that we'll be ready to do it. We can't pull the trigger sometimes until a little farther down the road, but we are as prepared as we can be in terms of being prepared to hire. We've been working on that right now, just basically getting an exam together, list together, so on. So if we are going to hire, we can just go ahead and do that as quickly as we can. And train as quickly as we can.
And I guess my concern is, it feels like there's a possibility we could head into being in a vice where our workload is going up while we're cutting our budget. And it seems like this fall is going to be a very important one to be able to closely monitor what the economic indicators are to make sure we preserve as much of our budget as possible. Because I'd hate to cut our budget in this fall cycle and then go into a new year with a maybe even extraordinarily higher workload. And I'm just going to flag that for months down the road.
Good, thank you.
Just one question. Is the October revise, is that the estimate that feeds into the Jan 10 budget for the
Yes.
governor? Okay.
Thank you, Ralph. Any other questions or comments for our Chief Administrative Officer, Rob Silla? Seeing none. Is there anything else for open session that I've neglected? Okay. In that case, it looks like we've finished the open session agenda. Are there any closed session items?
Not at this time.
Okay, we have finished open session. There is nothing for closed session. In that case, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.